Good morning, Junior Church, and happy Sunday.
Saturday.
Yeah, it's Saturday today, but when these guys watch it, it's going to be Sunday, isn't it? Anyway, hi everybody, I'm Shauna, and this is my lovely son, Jamie.
I'm sick.
Yeah. Jamie's feeling a little bit poorly today. Got a bit of a cough, bit of a cold.
Not corona.
Not corona. No. Anyway, today we're going to carry on talking about trust in Junior Church, as we have been doing for the last few weeks. And we're going to hear the story of David and Goliath. Now, this is an epic story. And while you're listening to it, I just want you to have a little bit of a think. What are the ways that God really does speak to David? Where are the ways that David is hearing God and trusting him? So let's think about that while we listen to this story. So meet King Saul. He ruled over the people called the Israelites. The Israelites were at war with the Philistines. God regretted making Saul king because he was disobeying him. So God told Samuel was a prophet. He told him to go and find him a new king. God said to Samuel, "Go to Bethlehem. There is a man named Jesse with 8 sons. One of them will be the next king." When Samuel first met Jesse's sons, he just automatically thought that the oldest son, named Eliab, would be the one that God had chosen. He was handsome and tall and strong. But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not look at the way he looks or how big he is. Eliab is not the one I have chosen. The way he looks doesn't matter to me. I look at the heart." Jesse brought more of his sons to meet Samuel, but none of them God had chosen either. Samuel asked Jesse, "Have I met all your sons?" Jesse replied, "I have one son left named David. He's the youngest, and he's out looking after the sheep. I'll bring him to meet you." So everybody, meet David. Now, here he is out in the fields, looking after his dad's questionable looking sheep. And it was out in the field where David really learned to trust God. He had to really rely on him for protection and provision while he was caring for these sheep, all on his own in the middle of the night. And vicious bears and wolves would try and come and take the dodgy looking sheep away. But David, in God's name, fought these animals off and killed them, and he knew that he could do anything in God's power. As soon as Samuel saw David, the Lord spoke to him and said, "He is the one." So Samuel anointed him with oil, which was a special way of promising him that he'd be the next king. And from that day on, the power of the Lord was with David. So David continued to take care of his father's sheep in the fields. When he didn't have much to do in the field, he played instruments and wrote songs and poems that you can find in the book of Psalms in your Bible. Meanwhile, Saul was still king, and he was having some problems with the Philistines. The main problem is that they had giants living in their land. One of the strongest and biggest giants was named Goliath. Now, Goliath was over 9 feet tall. He was covered in armour to protect him, and he carried a massive spear. Every morning and every evening, he would shout to the Israelites in his big, deep voice.
"Hey, you guys, I dare you to come and send one man to fight me. If he can beat me, we will become your servants. But if I win, you will become our servants."
When Saul and all his men heard this, they were very, very afraid. Now, David's father Jesse heard about the giant, and he was a bit worried about his sons. They were out on the battlefields fighting the war. So he called out to David in the fields and asked him to take some food to his brothers and report back how they were doing. So David set off to visit his brothers. As he approached them, he heard Goliath shouting his usual challenge like he did every morning. Isn't someone going to stand up to this man? David asked the men in the army. No. Right, well then I will fight this giant Philistine. Now one of the men overheard this and he ran to Saul and told him what David had said. Saul approached David and said, "You can't fight Goliath. You're only a boy and he's been fighting for many years." But David said to Saul, "I have had to fight lions and bears to protect my father's sheep. God helped keep me safe then, and he will help keep me safe now." Saul wasn't trusting in God. He didn't believe that God could help David fight Goliath. That's too bad, because God knew that David would know exactly what to do, and that's why God loved him and wanted him to be king. So Saul dressed David in heavy armour to protect him from Goliath. But David had to take it off. It was so heavy he could hardly walk, and he knew that God would keep him from harm. Instead, David went to a stream nearby and found 5 smooth stones. He put them in a pouch around his waist, and with his sling he went to Goliath. As David approached Goliath, Goliath looked at David and laughed. He thought it was a joke. Goliath thought that he could easily beat David, and it was funny that Saul would send a small boy to fight him. But David said to him without fear, "You fight with sword, and I come with God on my side, and today everyone will know that there is one true God in this land." Goliath didn't care what David said, and he moved closer to attack him. Reaching into his pouch, David pulled out a stone, put it in his slingshot, and shot it at Goliath. The stone had hit him right between his eyes, and suddenly Goliath started to lose his balance. He fell with a thud right on his face. David had done it. He'd defeated the giant Philistine. When the rest of the Philistines saw this, they ran away, and David became a hero to all the people in Israel. So welcome back, Junior Church, and I hope that you did enjoy that little video. So what I think is really, really epic about that is that God used David in his childhood. So when he was young, like you guys, and he used him in an amazing way. And that makes me know and believe that you can be used by God. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what's going on in your life. God can use you, and that's really exciting. But David did something really, really important, and he spent time with God. So when he was out in the field looking after his father's sheep, it was there that he learned to trust God. He built that trust by listening, by chatting and catching with God out in the field. And when the time came that he really needed God, when the danger came, when those lions and those bears came to take those sheep away, David knew that he could call on God's power and on God's strength, and he came through. So when David had to go and fight this huge giant Goliath, he knew then, he'd already had his practice in the fields. He knew that God would come through for him. And so he went into that battle, into that fight, with all the strength and all the power of God he knew was in him. And I think that's a really, really relevant thing for today for us, because we really do need to build our trust in God. And one of the amazing ways that we can do that is by talking to him, by spending time with him, getting to know him. In the Bible, in the book of Jeremiah, it says, "Call to me and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things that you do not know." Wow, isn't that amazing that we can talk to God and he can answer us, he can speak back to us. And so I really want to encourage you all this week that I'm going to put a couple of questions up at the end of the video, and maybe you could just set some time aside, just go off on your own, be somewhere quiet, and do some chatting and catching with God. You could maybe ask these questions that I put up, or you can think of your own questions. God so wants to spend time with you. He wants you to get to know him, just as David did, to know that he is trustworthy and that you can rely on him. So you spend that time with him this week. You definitely won't regret it. So I pray that you have an amazing week at school. Pray blessings over your family, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.